headline there is, I don't know whether you know, but Eddie Stobart is a company that have a fleet of trucks, and they've decided that they're going to have a pool of lawyers, and the idea is if you want legal aid, you can look and it'll be the cheapest one that you can find, you see. Whereas now, if you're in custody, you can actually say, well, I want my solicitor. But you can't in the future if they decide the cuts. It's getting a lot of, I mean, everybody's disagreed with it. I mean, the President of the Supreme Court, the Chief Inspector of Prisons, 60 or so judges. I mean, you know, apart from the Queen, I don't think everybody's against it. It wasn't removing the new proposals. It doesn't get removed entirely. It just means that you don't have access to people that you know, the family lawyers, for example, or people who are familiar with a case.
Right. So effectively, what you have is you have a group of people who are cheap, and you even get to choose who amongst them?
No. So somebody decides, oh, you can have this person because he's cheap, and go off. And of course, that person might be a lawyer that has absolutely no experience much in criminal cases anyway. You know, they'll always have some representation. It's whether they'll get the right representation is the worry.
What would be the difference between just representation in general and getting the right representation?
Well, the individual lawyers who, some of them know what they're doing, and who are, for example, very familiar with prison law, for example. Under this new scheme, if you've got a problem when you're in prison, you have to do it through the prison. You can't have a judicial review or anything. And the Chief Inspector of Prisons has said, well, that's all very well if you had a good system in prison, but you don't. Very often, he said, when I go in and I look at cases, the person who's being complained about is actually the person who's got the job of deciding whether it's a reasonable complaint. Right. So he said that's.
And so will the hourly rate for those lawyers be less than it would be?
I think it's going to be, yes. That's why they're making the cuts, of course. Well, it's part of, you've got the same problem here. I mean, as I listen to the television, the Labour or the Conservatives are saying, well, the Labour is just, using money that you don't have. And I think we had 13 years of Labour who was spending money all the time. So when they finished their 13 years, or the government said that they didn't really have any money, and it was about time we cut back. And I think everybody is sympathetic to the fact that cuts have to be made. The problem with lawyers is that, of course, you confuse the two different groups. You've got the QCs who make a lot of money, serious money, and then you've got legal aid lawyers who by and large don't make a lot of money. They can only charge a certain amount per session. So the public have mixed these two up. So when you're talking about sorting out the lawyers, they don't quite understand that there's two different groups we're talking about. Well, they still do at the moment, but if the cuts get approved, then of course in the future they won't. They'll get a list of people like Eddie Stobart's lorry people who've decided to develop their own group of lawyers, and you'll get it on the basis of who's offering the least cost.
Yeah.
In theory, of course, it is available to everyone, because if you've got the possibility of legal aid, it doesn't matter who you are. If you qualify, you get it.
Yeah.
In the future, that's not going to happen. you'll get legal assistance if you can pay for it.
Yeah.
And if you can't pay for it, you'll end up with somebody who you don't know and who will be the cheapest one on offer. And it could have a big effect on cases, of course, on miscarriages of justice cases. Well, I think there are some areas that could be looked at, but certainly stopping legal aid for people who can't afford it, and just saying, "Oh well, we've got somebody up here who might help you," is I think the president of the Supreme Court said it's going to affect the edifice of justice.